South India's #1 travel brand. You know you are special when you're with GT Holidays.
MCR Pure Cotton Club, formals and casual shirts.
Vedanta Premium, Coimbator's best retirement township starting from 65 lakhs.
Hi Malavika, how are you? Welcome to Galatta Plus.
Hi, I'm good. Happy to be here.
And I think this is our first face-to-face interview.
It is.
We did one during COVID.
We did.
Yeah, that was
the
like
Zoom era.
Zoom era. It's hard to believe that something like that existed. Now tell me, why are you scared of butterflies?
I was not expecting this opening question.
But I don't mean this in a funny way at all. I'm genuinely curious as to, because it's fascinating, right? Because everybody's so different. So what is it about butterflies that...
You know, it's one of those things that I recall, like one of my earliest memories as a child is being, I think, 4. It's one of those vague memories that we have. I was 4 or something like that, and there was this resort back in the day called Farias in Lonavala, which was this very, a place a lot of people went to. And my father was there for some work, and me and my mom had tagged along. And I remember her taking me to the garden early evening one day, and there were butterflies everywhere. And all the other kids and everybody was just mesmerized by like, wow, and they were chasing butterflies. And I remember like being there and being mortified and just like wailing and crying and just like clinging onto my mom, and she just couldn't understand like what's happening to the child. So she had to like rush me back in. But it's one of those weird things that they flutter too much, yeah. Anything that flutters freaks me out. Even pigeons.
Pigeons and butterflies.
Yeah, just fluttery creatures.
Right. Something that disturbs. No, but it's interesting, because I once had an interview with a person, and I don't want to name the movie, but they said they didn't like the movie. And I said why, and I expected a reason like, oh, you know what, this character didn't work for me, that some screenplay didn't work, whatever. They said the movie was too wet. I said, what do you mean the movie was too wet? She said, no, it was raining all the time, the leaves had water, the trees were all wet. And I was like, wow, that's
quite a reason.
That's quite a reason. I'm like, the triggers that it's very strange.
It's a very visceral thing, right? It's what sometimes we can't really pinpoint, but it's what something makes us feel.
Yeah.
It could be anything. Like that's how we connect to something broad spectrum, something like art.
Yeah.
We look at a painting and we like it or not like it.
Yeah.
Not because of logical reasons, not because the lines are a certain way or the face is a certain way.
Right.
It makes us feel something. Either it terrifies us or it just makes us feel like something makes us feel wet.
Yeah, I know. It's just very strange. And I was like, and I don't want to use the word strange or weird because like that's that person, right? It's like it is. So
it's interesting though.
It's interesting. Yeah. It's just like what does that trigger?
Butterflies just make me feel uneasy.
Nice. So you don't want to do movies with pigeons and butterflies and things like that.
Absolutely
now I think even if
not.
they did butterflies, it would be CG. So that would be like something. So the Hollywood actor Halle Berry, she's a Bond woman, very, very, very beautiful woman, and like kind of thing. She said, I have longed for someone to say something to me other than, you're so pretty. I know I'm more than this. Do you think there is a tendency for every industry, film industry in the world, to slot actresses into these are the glamour people and these are the acting people based on their looks?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think it's a human tendency, not just for the industry, but for society in general, to have certain boxes that we put people into. As per, like it differs culture to culture, differs demographic to demographic, obviously. But I think it gives people a sense of structure in a larger sense. And similarly for the industry, I think it's, like people are so easy to box you. And if I had to speak about women, they're so easy to put you in the, she's great for a girl next door. She's great if you want a village girl. She's great if you want like a hot, bold, like bold is a term that's thrown around very often, a hot, bold girl. She's great if you would want somebody who's not much of a looker, but who's a great actor. Like I hear people talk like this all the time, especially producers and, like pretty much everybody. So you're absolutely right. So as an actor, I think the challenge becomes then you want to kind of figure out a way to break that pattern.
Right.
You want to give people what they're not expecting from you because the larger thing exists. So then you're figuring out a way to hack the system. But of course it exists.
Let's say Thangalaan, right? That's a movie where that does not depend. It depends on your physicality. It depends on a lot of other things. Your acting, the way you're portraying yourself, the way you're projecting yourself rather. That's one film where we don't see Malavika Mohanan. Because your face is all covered with some kind of paint or powder, and you're very unlike the way you look.
Right.
Of course, one of the reasons you took it was because Paranjit, he wanted to act with in a movie directed by him, all that. But is there also a reason like I want to just erase myself and just put my character up on screen? Could that have also been a reason?
Yes, yes, it was, because I was actively looking at roles where people didn't see me the way they always see me, which is see my pictures or see my photo shoots, or the a certain notion of me existed, and I was very keen and looking for a way I could break that, and I was looking for an interesting character. So when this came along, I was like, this is as opposite end as it gets, where I'm not me, and whether I bring this character to life convincingly or not depends on pretty much every other aspect except my looks.
Right.
But looks in a different sense, with the makeup and like the look of the character.
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
But not me. My hair doesn't have to be a certain way. It's not the quintessential way of, how a heroine has to be on screen. And that's something that excited me, frightened me. But I saw it as an opportunity to do this exact thing that you mentioned, and I just grabbed it and went all out.
Yeah. Why did it frighten you?
It was, I had to shed all the inhibitions I had, every role I'd done up until then. Like, for example, in a shot where I had to scream that loud, I couldn't do it the initial few times. Like, just open my mouth, show all of my teeth, just contort my
Thangalaan.
face in Thangalaan. The first time I had to do this wild scream, I just couldn't do it. And Paranjit had to come stand next to me and literally handhold me through the process, and he had to tell me things like, listen, and he's quite a feminist. He had to be like, listen, women are stronger than men. You're more strength than men. You can do it. You have that physical strength, and I want this character to stand for that, stand for the strength that women have. That people don't show in cinema. So he had to kind of push me to do things that I was not at all comfortable with, like something as basic as screaming. You think it's easy, right? We scream all the time, like if I'm having a fight with my mom at home, or with a friend. But I couldn't bring myself to do it, or to physically just open up a lot more, like to be a lot more raw, be brash, change the way I stand, change the way I walk. All of that was very, I had to shed all my inhibitions, and it took me like a good, a month to ease into things.
Right.
Yeah.
The last time we spoke, that Zoom call interview, you mentioned that it's fascinating how different industries do different things. For example, you mentioned that in Malayalam cinema, you can just be without makeup and vanish into, I think you mentioned Parvati in Oire, and how she pretty much blended in with the cast and she was not standing out. Whereas in Telugu cinema, even a simple shot, you have to be fully, with lipstick and, eyelashes and this and that and all that, because that's the nature of, that's how they expect, that's the nature of that's the DNA of the cinema. When you move from industry to industry, is it a little disorienting that I'm acting in Christie, so I can be this, I'm acting in Raja Saab with Prabhas, so I have to be this? Is that a little disorienting? Does it affect the way you perceive your character, the way you put yourself out there?
I feel my opinion on that has changed a little bit now. I think even industries have changed in the sense, we see somebody like a Sai Pallavi in Amaran. It's a very commercial, if I had to put that in a box, it's a very commercial Tamil film, and she's without any makeup, and she's so true to the character.
Yeah.
So now I feel like in the last 4 years, because of the rise of OTT, because even the common man is not just consuming films in their particular language, but they're watching so much of everything. Everything's become so global. Somebody sitting in Tamil Nadu is watching, has access to Mexican films, French films, American films, and so on, right? The boundaries have really blurred. So I feel like now it's become a lot more about how you want to approach a character. How do you want to play it, where do you want to take something like that? And I think what's disorienting is just jumping from one character, a genre that is so, Raja Saab that I'm doing with Prabhas is a horror comedy. or horror romantic comedy. Jumping from that to something like a Thangalaan, which I was doing at one point, I think the nature of the films being so different, that is more disorienting than anything else. But I think when it comes to approaching a character, now it's more about how do you make it as natural as possible, or what's expected out of the film. Like Raja Saab is, it's
a big commercial film.
It's a big commercial film. So you look what you look the way that character is supposed to look like. Whereas Christy is a girl from a small town in Kerala. So you look the way she's supposed to look like. So I think now it's become more about keeping it natural.
Keep it natural. No, you have a good lineup of, you have Raja Saab, you have Sardar 2, that all that stuff is coming up. When these films come to you, how do you make up your mind that you're going to do this? Is it like, this is a big project, a good banner, this is good visibility that's happening? Or do you also say, like, you ask for a narration of your character and you, or maybe read the script and kind of, make sure that, yes, I know that I'm being a little brutal here, but maybe I don't have much to do in this film, but the little that I have to do, or it has to be something significant. So
I think it's two ways. I think one, based on the knowledge that you have of the industry, it's a very instinctual thing. Like, okay, this makes sense. Like, this is great for, like, there are times I've done a film because it's important to be, like, you might not have much to do as an actor. You might not have many scenes, but you're collaborating with certain people and it's going to give you a lot of momentum. It's going to make sure that you're talked about.
Right.
And that is also important.
Right. Like, because it's like, and also it could be personal. It could be like, hey, I've always wanted to act with Rajnikant, and, that's a checkbox kind of a thing.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely, which it was. Like, when Peta came my way, a lot of people told me that, and I was only doing lead roles in like other, I was still figuring my way in the industry, but whatever I'd done so far were all lead roles. And I did Peta and it was a supporting part. And everybody was like, oh, don't do it, especially if you do this as your first film in Tamil, you'll never get any lead role, and all of that. And I just went with my instinct and I was like, A, I really want to work with Rajni sir, and B, I feel like this character has a couple of nice scenes that I would love to, like, there's something of consequence. It's not completely inconsequential.
Right.
And I'm glad I followed my gut, because that's where my journey into Tamil started. And you won't believe it, the amount of people, I have had producers who've come to meet me to narrate films with, like, another big actor from Tamil opposite him. And I didn't connect to the subject per se, And I remember, like, politely declining it. And he just went like, oh, you've done a supporting part in Peta. You'll never get anything bigger than this in Tamil. And I just politely went like, okay, let's see where my life takes me, right? Like, let's see where destiny takes me. And after 3 months, Master came my way.
Yeah.
And Master was announced. And that's as big as it gets in Tamil.
Yeah.
And the same producer reached out to me and said, oh, happy for you, all the best. So
he did that. That's nice of him.
He did do that. It's sweet of him.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. Like, people are so quick to put you in a box, because people were like, oh, you also did and I didn't know it was such a big deal at that point. I did a couple of scenes where I had to play like an older, like an older woman, because majority of my portion was in the flashback where I'm younger. But a couple of scenes I had to, like, have a little grey in my hair and everything. And that's supposedly a very big thing in Tamil commercial cinema, which I had no idea at that point.
Yeah.
So people were like, oh, no, she's played a mother, she won't get anything. And then Master happened, and then the amount of attention an announcement like that got me, and the amount of love, I got, because of, it's always, I call it a trickle-down effect. Because Talapati Vijay is so well loved, his fans are just waiting to love whoever is, like, working with him and all of that. And I was lucky to, like, get that love and kind of ride that wave. So Master did so much for me, even though, my character was she was barely there in the film. But you get so much out of every film. Like, you get something or the other out of every film. Like, what I got from Thangalaan is very different from what I got from something like a Master. So you can't discount anything.
Right.
So everything adds up, basically.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that you're playing a mother, because I hear a lot of producers telling me that one of the things they find very tough is to find a leading lady who will play a mother character, because they're terrified that if they do that,
Yeah.
then they're just going to be slotted as...
For good reason, right? I did it without knowing it. I mean, not like I can be very stubborn about my choices when I want to be, which I think is important. As an artist, you really follow your gut, right? Because only you know what's feeling right or what's not. Nobody else can make that decision. No amount of advisors or people surrounding you can make that decision for you after a point. It's you who's in charge of your journey, and you are the one responsible for the graph you're going to have at the end of your career. But having said that, like, just after doing one film, the amount of times I had to hear, oh my God, you were very gutsy to do that, and you were very this. The next time I'm offered, I will think about it, and that's because the industry has made me wary about it, not because I have been wary about it.
Yeah, you've imbibed that consciousness.
Yes,
Yeah.
I've imbibed that consciousness now. So now when I get a role, I'm like, oh God, I don't want to go through that whole thing again of people being like, trying to slot me and all of that, because it took me, I had to break that. I got slotted, I had to break it. I don't want to be slotted again. So it's the industry that makes an artist conscious about, not wanting to play a mother. We're not born with that thought.
Yeah, and it's very strange because with male actors, it's never a problem. You play old, you play young, you play this, you play that, nothing. It's just like a role. But with actresses, it's always like there's that slotting is something
Absolutely.
that...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like even with Thangalaan, a few people like saw my stills and all of that before the film came out, and they were like, oh, you look like you're from like one of the actors, one of the other like an actor from one of the other films I'm working with, not the lead actor, but one of the other actors. He saw the pictures and he was like, oh, you look like one of the characters from, I forgot, in Bahubali,
the enemy clan.
The opposite enemy clan. They were like, oh, you look like, you're from that clan.
Yeah.
And I was expecting him to say, oh, wow, what a transformation, that's so cool, because that's what you want a fellow actor to say. That's what I would think if somebody showed me a picture of their transformation. But instead, he was just like, oh, you look like you one of the Rakshasas or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was amused. I mean, you can't take these things too seriously. I was amused. But I was so glad that when the film came out, because something like that felt so high risk in terms of, if not executed right, a character like that can so easily come across as awkward or cringe, or just like you don't connect with, you don't see characters like that, right? You have very few reference points for something like that. And I was so relieved because after the release, like mostly everything that came my way were like good things. So I was like, that's my biggest relief, that, it landed correctly, because something like that can very easily not land right.
Are you one of those actors who, especially because, that's such a complicated role, and it's a never before part like Thangalaan, or maybe even other roles, let's say Beyond the Clouds, are you one of those people who, like after the shot, you go and ask the director, was that okay? Was that, do you want me to do something? Or are you just like, okay, if there's anything wrong, they'll come and tell me. So I'm just going to pretend that I did everything right.
This is a very interesting question in relation to Thangalaan, because Paranjit is quite a unique director. I don't know if you've heard this from the other actors you've interviewed, but he's quite unique in the way he goes about things. He doesn't communicate too much at all.
I've heard this.
He doesn't communicate.
Yeah.
And as actors, all of us had a very different reaction to how he was, I really feed off the other person's energy. So I'm feeding off your vibe, So if I'm working with a director who's a very verbose person, I end up becoming the same way with that person, But having said that, you want like certain questions answered.
Yeah.
Otherwise, how do you bring the character to life? So I was petrified when I began filming, because I was so scared of how physical we started with like very complicated stunt sequences. And I was finding it very hard to crack it. Like I just couldn't crack the body language for a very long time. So I was very nervous to like go up to him any which ways, because I was not doing a great job in the beginning. So I was scared that he would just snap at me or yell at me or something. So I think the equation became that I would just do the shot, and if anything, if it was bad, he would just say. He would just, say one more, or like tell you, do it better, do something. Sometimes he would just say things like, do something. And I'm like, but what do I do? You got to tell me what to do. You can't just say, do something. So he has his own way of communicating, but once you kind of crack what he means, Then I figured out, after a few weeks, I was like, okay, he wants me to like add something more to this. He wants me to add more actions probably, or he wants me to make it wilder. He wants me to. So then I figured out what he meant by what, but the whole process of cracking that was very amusing. And every actor went through their own journey with him in terms of,
How many languages do you speak?
I'm born and raised in Mumbai.
So Hindi, Malayalam, English?
Hindi,
forget that.
Malayalam, English. I speak Marathi.
Okay.
I went to a state syllabus school, so Marathi was a part of the curriculum, and for some reason I really like the language. Marathi, I used to speak Gujarati quite a bit, again having grown up in Mumbai, and I had a lot of friends, Gujarati friends. Now I understand, I speak Tamil a little bit. I think I still have to muster the confidence to just
Right.
speak it more often.
The question I was coming to is, so Telugu is off syllabus, right? You don't know
Telugu,
it.
I'm working on my first film.
Right,
So
that's
I really like the language. Like something about it is very catchy to my ears. I think by the time I'm on to my second film, third film, I'll be there. I want to learn it though.
Right, but how do you handle not knowing a language and going into a role? Like, how do you handle that?
I think like earlier, before I myself had awareness about my own strengths and weaknesses as an actor, I think I've been quite a late bloomer, if I may say that so myself. I have now I know that I don't like the burden of last minute dialogues. Like we're not here for a memory test. It's not the test is not the memory. The test, if at all there is one, is tapping into your emotions
Right.
and feeling it in the moment. And given last minute dialogues really takes away from, it's such a stress that you can't really focus on the emotions. So now every maker I work with, when I meet them for the narration, I'm like, sir, and in most of the South Indian industries, the culture is such that they give dialogues last minute.
Yeah.
Most of them. But I request that, sir, if you can give it to me at least like one day in advance, because I would like to learn it. I don't enjoy working in the stressful state of mind, because earlier I have worked with makers who've just given things on the spot, and I've just done such a bad job. I look back and I can't watch myself in some of the scenes. I'm just like, oh, I should have really done this better. I should have told this person that, this is my process. Please just help me through it. So I do that now, and they're sweet enough to comply. Like Paranjit would give me my dialogues a day or two in advance. Everybody makes changes, but more or less the structure is given, at least a day or two in advance. Even with the Telugu film I'm doing, Maruti sir, he's very sweet. So everything's given prior. Otherwise, it's too tough, yeah. Otherwise, you can't. Otherwise, it's just bad acting.
You've been in the industry for over 10 years now. I think this is your 11th year?
It is. But having said that, after I did my first film when I was in college, I didn't really pursue films immediately after that for a while, because it was more like hey, do I enjoy this? I kind of dabbled in something, and then I wanted to actually be behind the camera. I was very interested in learning filmmaking, and I had applied to FTI, in fact. I got through the written round, which itself is a very tough round, because so many people, out of all the thousands of applicants, they select I think 20, 30 people for the orientation, for the interview round. And then they do a 3-day orientation, and then they, the grind. I got through the written exam, and I knew I really wanted to pursue filmmaking, but I was still figuring out what did I have an aptitude for? Was it cinematography? Was it editing? Direction? What was it? So when I had to tick mark the box for my application, I was like, I don't want to put cinematography for the sake of it. So I'm just going to put, editing. I don't know why I did that. And I applied, I got through, I went for the orientation. So the interview round, that didn't, it was so funny. I was sitting with 10 panelists at the interview round, and after 3 days of orientation, they sit me down and they're like, listen, we would love to have you here, but we feel you're better suited for cinematography because you have a very strong visual sense and a very strong sense when it comes to the visual medium as a whole, more than editing. So we think you should apply for that. And so that's how, that was my track.
Your dad must have been so happy.
He doesn't express anything, so I don't know.
So, yeah.
He's a very South Indian dad in that sense. You know how there are a lot of South Indian fathers who don't like whatever they're feeling, you can't tell what they're feeling because everything is so internalized. Whereas with like Punjabi fathers and all of that, they're like, like they say things out loud and all of that. But there's a very South Indian dad trait. So he doesn't express too much. So I had like a whole plan I was on after my first film because I wasn't sure if that's something I saw myself doing particularly. And then I assisted a filmmaker and I was on that track, And then after a few years is when I again like came back to like acting. So I don't really count it as that long. My journey, in my head, it's not that long because it was never a continuous journey, I think I counted, I would say from Beyond the Clouds.
Yeah.
Is when in my head, so like 6 years is when in my head I've been around because I've been doing consistent work since then.
6 years, and if you leave out the first film, 10 films, do you think you could have done more, you could have done less? I'm just curious why this number seems a little like, if you've been here for 6 years, I feel that maybe you should have done more.
I should have, you're right. Because also what happened was things were, like there was so much of momentum in terms of things happening back to back. So I have been I don't think I work in the quintessential way where I take on things back to back because I should be doing it or because one announcement will help get more films. Like that's never been the way I think. I've been okay doing my own thing. I'm like, even if it's 1 film a year, 2 films a year, I want to do things I enjoy and travel the rest of the time. Like that was my mindset for the longest time. So I was very selective. But around the time I was doing Master is when I started getting so many interesting offers from different industries, So my lineup, and this is right before COVID. So I had finished Master. I remember we were done with the audio launch or something, and the film was going to release soon. And I was immediately getting into a Hindi film I was doing with Excel Entertainment. And after that...
That's Yudhra.
That's Yudhra.
Yeah.
And then I was going to do a film that Lokesh was directing at that point with Rajnikant sir. And I was going to play like, his daughter in the film in that particular subject. So this was the lineup in a span of just like 6 months. And then COVID happened. And then...
Everything.
And then our initial reaction was like, oh my God, 2 weeks, because initially the lockdown was supposed to be like a week or 2 week lockdown. And then it just went on and everything just got so stagnant and things moved so slowly post that.
Yeah.
And I remember one of my friends saying, actually, I remember Anirudh Ravichander. I remember him, like we were talking one day and he was just like, damn, like why is this happening at the prime of our careers? Like why now?
Yeah. A lot of people ask that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was like, the established ones were okay.
They were okay. They were having babies and all. Yeah, they were utilizing that time to, I'm like, that's great, right? It's win-win.
Yeah.
You've had a great career. You anyway want to have a baby and you're utilizing. So the timing worked out right for certain people.
Yeah.
But for the rest of us, where we had like such exciting lineups in place, once COVID happened, once it started, every film took its own time to like, only 50 people crew allowed. So you couldn't do the big action stuff. Yudhra had to wait a very long time. Something like Master had to wait for the right release window.
Yeah.
So there was a long lag that ate up into 2 to 3 years of my life in the last 6 years.
That explains a lot.
Because otherwise my filmography would have had at least like 5 more films by now.
By now, yeah. I follow your Q&As on Twitter because they're kind of funny.
I really have to pinch myself to not say too much because I think I have a tendency to just, be very candid.
Yeah, but there is one thing where somebody had said, when are you going to go to an acting class or something? And then you told them that when you become relevant enough, then you can ask me this question again. And it's very funny that you said that. But, as an actor, this is a kind of a serious zone I'm getting into. How important is it to maintain an image? Or are these things just fun things? Because sometimes something can snowball into, oh my God, she's so arrogant, or like, what I mean, right? So a lot of actors, even though they want to say things, they just like clam up and don't retaliate. Some of them do. Some of the controversial things that happen when people go back and forth on Twitter and all that.
Right.
So when you give these Q&As and all that, does that play on your mind that, oh my God, maybe I shouldn't have done that. You know, like
No, not
I'm
at
mainly
all.
concerned about is image a thing anymore, or people just separate? Okay, that is Twitter Malavika, and this is the cinema Malavika.
I feel that it's somewhere what people connect to is the real you. And that could be whatever. Like every person is a different, everybody has their own personality, their own behavioral tendencies. And you can't be just prim and proper all the time. There are times if something irks me, it irks me, and it's natural. We all get irked. Sometimes I don't want to put up with random trolling. Like 99 out of 100 times we put up with it, we'll see a nasty comment about ourselves or something, and we let it slide because you can't be sitting and retaliating. Then I would only be doing that on
Yeah,
Twitter.
that'd be like your full-time job.
But
Yeah.
sometimes you see something nasty and you're just like, that's plain nasty. That's not criticism and that's not constructive. That's not somebody being nice or trying to help, or that's just plain bullying. And sometimes you don't want to put up with bullying, and I think it's completely okay to do that because you can't be a version of yourself just for the sake of your profession all the time. You have to be you, in a contained way, not in an unabashed way, in a responsible way. But I think it's still important to like stand up for things that you would stand up for.
Yeah, I mean, for the record, I think you did the right thing. But I just wanted to, ask about this image thing.
Did I regret it? No, absolutely not. I will still say the same thing.
Now, apart from Thangalaan and Christie, where you play an older woman that a young boy gets attracted to, which are the films that you would say showcased you as an actor?
I would say there are some moments in Beyond the Clouds that, I mean, I am my harshest critic, as most of us are with our own work. But I liked Beyond the Clouds. I liked, especially there are certain scenes that even when I go back and watch now, I thought, okay, that was yeah. well executed. But apart from that, I would say that Thangalaan. Like I think I know you already mentioned it apart from these two, but I would emphasize on that because it's the hardest I have ever worked in my life, and it's like I don't think I could give it anything more. I gave it everything from my time to like I blocked out a year and a half of my life, which not a lot of female actors do. When I was getting like a lot of offers from like Telugu, Tamil, like all of these industries. Because I couldn't let anything come in the way of that. It required intense prep. So physically, like everything was given physically, mentally, emotionally, to the best of my abilities at that point in time, to who I was in that phase. I've given it my all, So that for me is a very special one in terms of performance. And in fact, the thing is that around 50% of my scenes were chopped off in the final edit.
Yeah.
A lot of the scenes were chopped off because of
it's a longer
length,
film,
but there was a lot more, so a lot more time. What I'm trying to say is that a lot more time was spent shooting for it, executing it. And a lot of the things that were chopped off were a lot of portions where I was talking. Like I had scenes where I'm talking, because when you see the final edit, the character doesn't have anything much to say.
Right.
So when I told my friends that I've spoken this, this very hard Tamil and, all of them. When they saw the film, they were like, it was hardly there, you know.
But in a way, I think that kind of made you more of an enigma, as that, like when I saw the film, it was a little, because there is this surreal element to the film, and had you explained a lot more, I'm just doing a little bit of, like just trying to.
I know what you mean. Because somebody told me this as well.
Yeah, because the thing is, sometimes when a movie is going in a certain direction, certain things that accidentally come about may actually make that character a little. Of course, it's different from what you thought it would be, but then when we as an audience are watching it, it presents something else. So that's.
I completely agree with you. And I'm guessing that's, of course, what the director had in mind, because he did what he did.
Yeah.
But as an actor, we are so possessive of
all your scenes.
We're so possessive of like all the scenes we've done. you're watching it through a very
Yeah.
not really through an objective lens,
I
which is
had
great
a.
to have it there.
It's not just the actors; it's cinematographers as well. I once had a cinematographer said that he would not sit with a particular editor because that editor had chopped off his best scenes accordingly. And I said, but maybe they did it for the benefit of the film because like no, but I worked so hard on those scenes. The lighting was so difficult. It's a very similar thing.
I know, because I think what happens through the course of the filming is in our own head, we're kind of stitching the narrative
Yeah.
in a certain way
Yeah.
as per what we've done. So there's a film that we already have in our heads. And then we walk into the first screening,
And then
you watch it, and that it's completely haywire, and it's like an artistic heartbreak. It's like, oh my God,
That is not what I thought.
happening?
It's
This is
just like,
cheating.
yeah.
This is the artistic version of getting cheated on. I can't believe somebody did this to me. Like, it breaks my heart, and then all my friends have to sit and console me. But it's especially when you poured your heart and soul into a film, it's heartbreaking if this happens.
What did Ranjit tell you then?
He didn't say anything
Okay,
because I told you he's not the best at communicating.
Communicating, yeah. Now, tell me one thing. The reason I asked that question about acting was also, when we think of acting, typically we think of the huge dramatic roles, Thangalaan, all that effort and all that. But then something like Master or the Raja Saab also requires you to inhabit I might say that for some people that might actually be a more difficult space because you might be expected to do something that's totally off you.
Absolutely.
Like for example, I don't know about Raja Saab, but let's take that film. I'm guessing that maybe there are some things that are a little bit exaggerated from what you would do because whether in Tamil or Telugu, the meter is a little, for commercial films, is a little exaggerated, right? That could also be...
No, absolutely. You're so right. Because for something like Raja Saab, a lot of there's a comedy undertone to the entire film, and comedy is one of the hardest things to do. For most actors.
This is the first time, right, for you?
This is the first time, and thankfully, I am not the one delivering the comedy lines and stuff. Like, there are other actors in the scene who are doing that, but still you need to react a certain way to that, right?
Yeah.
You can't do realistic acting in every scene when, like you said, the meter is different and it's a more exaggerated, or you have to play as per the undertone. So there have been certain times when, of course, it's been challenging where, I'm just like, oh God, how do I do this and make it look good, So it's definitely challenging, and I'm not saying that's easy at all. In fact, I don't feel anything when it comes to cinema is easy.
Yeah.
Even people talk so frivolously if a female actor does like a special song in a film, they're so quick to categorize her as, she's just done a sexy number or whatever, when something like that is so hard to do. Like, I haven't done any, one yet. But it's so much hard work to get your body looking a certain way, to get your body moving a certain way, to make the choreography look good, to make it work, to make sure it lands right. It's very, very hard. So every aspect is so tough. But like you said, it's always the serious, loud roles that get appreciation for, or good acting, or people take notice of that. Whereas a lot of subtle things sometimes just they get lost. They don't get noticed for.
Yeah. You said that you acted with Rajinikanth because you wanted to. That was a bucket list thing, right? I mean, biggest star ever, that kind of thing. But whenever you're on a set like that, you face a Rajinikanth, you have a Vijay next to you, you have a Prabhas next to you. Is there a bit of fangirlishness that creeps in first and then you become the actor, or are you just all professional and like, okay, this is my job and I...
Initially, of course, because you've seen them on the big screen for so many years, and like with Prabhas, I'm a huge Bahubali fan. Like, I'm one of the, I'm like a bona fide I love Bahubali person. So
I think that's pretty much all of India.
And the funny thing is that I remember like ever since I watched the film, I really wanted to work with him. and it just seemed very far-fetched at that point because obviously, he's one of the biggest stars in India at the moment. Um, and right after Master, I remember getting a call from Prashant Neel's team because they were making Salar, and I met Prashant Neel for Salar, and I was so excited because I was like, hey, if I can make my debut with Prabhas, nothing like it, right? And I met him, and very, very sweet man, lovely man. And things unfortunately didn't work out. And I was like, oh damn, like how many opportunities come your way to like work with a star of that caliber. And then funnily enough, like after a few months, I again got a call, and it was for Raja Saab, which was again with Prabhas. And I was like, okay, there's some
Somebody wants this
I'm
happen.
destined to like make my Telugu debut
With Prabhas, yeah.
with Prabhas, and that's happening finally. And might I add that it's a great role. Like I'm so glad that this one worked out because it's a very the female character has got like a fun graph. She's there start to end. There's a lot to do, which you don't very commonly get in an A-list actor film. So I'm glad that this is the one.
Right. No, and I'm glad you said that because I think things are changing slowly because earlier, I mean, some of the questions I asked you were also because, like playing a mother, all that kind of stuff. Typically, when an actress went into an A-list actor film, it was basically just being arm candy, right? It's like it is just like 3-4 songs, maybe 1 or 2 emotional scenes, and that's pretty much it. But now that's changing a lot, and like you mentioned Sai Pallavi in Amaran. I think actors have also become a little less insecure about having strong female characters opposite them. That's also changing, I think. I kind of feel that.
I hope so, because the kind of films we've grown up on, like if I speak for myself, I grew up consuming a lot of Hindi films because I grew up in Mumbai. And every weekend, my family would be watching Malayalam movies, So I grew up on a mix of like Hindi and a little bit of like all the big Hollywood films that came to India at that point in the 90s and early 2000s, and Malayalam. So this is my sentimentality when it comes to cinema. And what connected me to a film was not how macho the hero was in the film or how much of action he's doing or how many slow motion shots he has. But what connected me as a child and what connects every single person is if the characters are memorable,
Yeah.
if the characters are well written, and not just the male character, even the female characters. Like I loved a Kuch Kuch Hota Hai because I loved, I love the female leads as well. Like they you want to dress like them, you want to be like them. Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, somebody like Kareena Kapoor, this over the top girl. It's you Jab We Met, Geet, you remember these characters. You remember Sri Devi in Chalbaz, Madhuri Dixit in Hum Aapke Hai Kaun. But if now those were if they just came for 4-5 scenes and stood next to the hero while they're fighting and went, the film as a whole wouldn't have the same impact.
Yeah.
And it's high time that a lot of makers in today's, time across all the industries, especially the younger generation makers, it's high time that they understand that you need well-written characters. One of the reasons Amaran worked was, of course, Sivakarthikeyan was amazing. The film was lovely. But people connected so much to the female role as well, like Sai Pallavi's role, her portrayal, everything. And it only helps uplift the film. It's not gonna do anything bad if you write a good female role. And I hope like more makers start doing that. It's high time.
I hope so too. And what's next for you?
What's
Apart from Raja Saab and Sardar 2?
Well, right now, both of these films, like I need to, I still have quite a lot to finish. So till March or April, I'm quite caught up. I'm in conversation for things across multiple industries, actually. So I need to figure out, like, which one I can take up next. But interesting, good roles.
Nice.
Stuff with good roles.
Fingers crossed. Thank you
Fingers
so much,
crossed.
Malavika.
Thank you. Thank you.
South India's #1 travel brand. You know you are special when you're with GT Holidays.
MCR Pure Cotton Club, formals and casual shirts.
Vedanta Premium, Coimbator's best retirement township starting from 65 lakhs.